November 28, 1944. The Canadian-built freighter Fort Cataraqui pushed slowly up the Scheldt Estuary toward Antwerp harbor. She carried the first Allied supplies to reach the port in 85 days. 85 days since British 11th Armored Division captured the city intact. 85 days while Allied armies struggled with fuel shortages that paralyzed offensives across the front. 85 days that gave Germany time to reorganize forces that should have been destroyed and prepare defenses that would cost tens of thousands of Allied lives. The port could handle 40,000 tons of supplies daily, enough to feed the entire Allied advance into Germany, enough to keep every tank fueled and every gun supplied. It sat there, fully operational but completely useless, for nearly 3 months because one British Field Marshal chose glory over logistics. Speaking of glory, if you appreciate stories where ambition trumps common sense, hit that subscribe button. It helps us dig into decisions that changed history. But to understand how the Allies captured a miracle and then let it gather dust for 3 months while men died for lack of ammunition, we need to go back to September 4th. September 4th, 1944. British 11th Armored Division rolled into Antwerp expecting devastation. Every German abandoned port had been demolished. Docks blown, cranes toppled, harbors blocked. The Belgian Resistance's White Brigade prevented it. Docks intact. Cranes operational. Warehouses ready. Europe's second-largest port fell into British hands like a gift. Field Marshal Bernard Montgomery immediately grasped what this meant. Allied supply crisis. Solved. The 400-mile truck convoys from Normandy. Obsolete. Fuel shortages strangling American advances. Finished. Antwerp could deliver supplies directly to Belgium with rail connections to Germany. Montgomery sent word to Eisenhower. Antwerp captured intact, ready for immediate use. There was one problem Montgomery didn't mention. Antwerp sat 60 miles inland. Ships navigated the Scheldt Estuary, a winding waterway through marshland, islands, narrow channels. Every mile controlled by German forces. German 15th Army held fortified southern positions. German troops occupied Walcheren Island and South Beveland. Coastal artillery covered shipping lanes. Mines filled the water. No Allied ship could reach Antwerp until those positions were cleared. Every German gun silenced. Every mine swept. Every fortification captured. The captured port was worthless until the estuary was secured. Montgomery's intelligence officers explained this in detail on September 5th, the day after Antwerp fell. The port cannot be used, they told him plainly. Not until the Scheldt is cleared. Not until German artillery positions are eliminated. Not until the waterway is swept for mines and German forces are driven from the banks. Montgomery understood perfectly. He acknowledged the situation clearly. His staff explained exactly what needed to be done and how long it would take. Then he decided to do something else first. Montgomery had raced across Belgium through August. 250 miles in 2 weeks of relentless advance. Brussels liberated September 3rd in a triumph. Antwerp captured September 4th with barely a shot fired. The Wehrmacht was in full retreat everywhere. German units fleeing east in disorder. He was absolutely convinced the German army was finished, beaten beyond recovery, scattered across the map. One more bold operation could end it. One audacious thrust into Holland straight across the Rhine River. One massive airborne assault to capture bridges and open the route into Germany's industrial heartland. Operation Market Garden. His staff immediately raised questions that seemed obvious to everyone except Montgomery. What about the Scheldt? What about securing Antwerp first before launching new operations? What about ensuring supply lines were solid before striking deep into enemy territory? Montgomery brushed them all aside with characteristic confidence. The Germans are beaten, he insisted to his skeptical staff officers. We must maintain momentum at all costs. Strike hard before they can reorganize. Delay now means giving them time to recover. Market Garden takes absolute priority over everything else. He needed Eisenhower's approval. Massive resources, 3 airborne divisions, priority for fuel and ammunition, control of air forces. Eisenhower was skeptical. His broad front strategy meant advancing on multiple axes. Concentrating everything on Montgomery meant starving other armies. Patton's Third Army sat east of Paris, tanks silent from fuel shortages. Hodges' First Army rationed ammunition. Montgomery wanted to divert scarce supplies to an airborne gamble instead of opening the port that could solve everything. But Montgomery's confidence was absolute. "Give me resources," he argued. "I'll be in Berlin by Christmas. I'll end the war in 1944. Eisenhower approved September 10th. Supply priority. 3 airborne divisions. Air forces committed. Neither man ordered the Scheldt cleared. They assumed it could wait. Catastrophic miscalculation. Quick aside. Tired of AI history channels that get the details wrong? We've got membership with real research, actual footage, no robots. Link below. Back to what was happening while Montgomery planned his glory operation. By mid-September, the Allied supply situation was approaching breaking point. Armies had advanced so far so fast across France and Belgium that supply lines simply couldn't keep pace with the advance. Everything still came from Normandy beaches and Cherbourg, over 400 miles behind the rapidly moving front lines. Every gallon of gasoline had to be trucked hundreds of miles from Normandy. Every artillery shell, every ration, every replacement part, every vehicle repair component. The trucks themselves needed fuel for the exhausting round trips across war-torn French roads. The system was collapsing under its own logistical weight. Patton's Third Army, which had raced across France in August like a venging fury, ran out of fuel completely. Tanks sat idle east of Paris, not from German resistance but simply because supply trucks couldn't reach them with gasoline. American crews who'd spent August chasing terrified Germans across France at breakneck speed now sat uselessly on their tank hulls watching autumn rain turn French roads to impassable mud. They knew the Germans were still reeling from summer defeats. They knew the road to the Rhine lay open ahead. Without fuel, a Sherman tank is just a 30-ton steel monument to wasted strategic opportunity. Hodges' First Army was forced to ration ammunition strictly. Units received orders to limit artillery fire dramatically. Conserve machine gun rounds carefully. Make literally every shot count because replacements simply weren't arriving from Normandy. The solution sat ready in Antwerp. 40,000 tons daily capacity. 200 miles closer than Normandy. Rail connections running directly to forward armies. But Antwerp's magnificent docks stayed completely empty. No ships could possibly reach them. Scheldt in German hands. Montgomery's attention elsewhere. Montgomery's 21st Army Group received priority supplies. Everything diverted to Market Garden. American armies told to consolidate, defend, wait. Patton protested to Eisenhower. "We're being starved. We could advance into Germany. Instead, we sit while Montgomery gets everything for an operation that doesn't address our supply problem." Eisenhower held firm. Market Garden launches September 17th. When it succeeds, supply improves. September 17th, 1944. 3 airborne divisions dropped into Holland. 101st at Eindhoven. 82nd at Nijmegen. British 1st at Arnhem. Largest airborne operation in history. Capture bridges. Create corridor for British ground forces. Montgomery promised the war would end in weeks. It didn't work. German resistance stronger than predicted. Single highway became killing ground. 2 SS Panzer divisions, supposedly destroyed, were refitting near Arnhem. British paratroopers surrounded, overwhelmed. 9 days, operation collapsed. Over 17,000 Allied casualties. British 1st Airborne suffered 80% losses. Effectively destroyed. Of 10,000 men who landed, only 2,400 returned. The rest dead or prisoners. German forces held Rhine crossings. Corridor closed. Montgomery declared it 90% successful. Claimed ground gained. Argued lessons learned. Showed no inclination to accept responsibility. While Market Garden burned through resources and lives, the Scheldt stayed in German hands. Antwerp sat useless. Something else happened Montgomery's planners failed to anticipate. While Allies focused on Market Garden, German 15th Army, supposedly trapped, pulled off a miracle. They evacuated 86,000 troops from south of the Scheldt across water to defensible positions. Boats and rafts. Men, equipment, guns. Under Allied noses. Those 86,000 would soon man fortifications blocking Antwerp access. The delay gave Germany exactly what it needed. Time to turn retreat into organized defense. By early October, reality settled. German army hadn't collapsed. War wouldn't end in 1944. Winter approached. Allied armies still fighting in France and Belgium, not Germany. Eisenhower called senior commanders. Topic: Logistics. How to sustain operations through winter. How to solve the supply problem. Answer was obvious. Antwerp. Clear the Scheldt. Get ships delivering supplies directly instead of trucking from Normandy. Montgomery was asked why the Scheldt hadn't been cleared. His forces were committed to Market Garden. Clearing estuary required resources. German positions were fortified. Would take time. Eisenhower's patience exhausted. I gave you priority for Market Garden. It failed. Now open Antwerp. Make it top priority. Get the port operational before winter. Montgomery agreed. Canadian First Army would clear the Scheldt. Begin immediately. Opened within weeks. But October was half over. Antwerp captured September 4th. 6 weeks wasted. 6 weeks when armies could have received 40,000 tons daily. 6 weeks with consequences nobody understood yet. If you're following how one man's ego cascaded into disaster, hit subscribe. We cover more decisions like this. Now watch what happened when the Canadians finally got ordered to clean up Montgomery's mess. Canadian First Army received orders mid-October. Mission: eliminate German forces, capture Walcheren Island, secure Antwerp approaches. The Scheldt was nightmare terrain. Low-lying polder, land reclaimed from sea surrounded by high dikes. Germans flooded areas by destroying dikes. Canadians attacked through water and mud. Infantry waded flooded fields. Tanks couldn't maneuver off dikes, silhouetted as targets. German 15th Army, those 86,000 evacuated troops, had concrete bunkers and the water itself. Blowing dikes turned battlefield into freezing briny hell. For Canadians, this was nightmare. No foxholes. Hit water in 6 inches. No cover. Land flat as a table. Wounded men slipped into freezing mud, often drowned before medics arrived. Rat-infested, miserable slog. Enemy invisible until water boiled with machine gun fire. Fighting was savage. Assault concrete bunkers in freezing water. Clear minefields under fire. Progress in hundreds of yards daily. Operation promised for weeks stretched into November. Casualties mounted. 2nd Infantry Division lost 2,000 men taking South Beveland. British assaulting Walcheren suffered 8,000 casualties. Open ground earned a nickname: the Coffin. Germans knew what they prevented. Hold the Scheldt, Antwerp stays useless. Antwerp useless. Allied supply lines stretched. Supply lines stretched, offensives limited. They fought for everything, made Canadians pay in blood. Bought Germany time for winter defenses. November 8th, Canadian forces secured Walcheren Island. Last German positions captured. Estuary in Allied hands. But mines remained. Every channel needed sweeping. Navy minesweepers began tedious work. Over 100 minesweepers cleared 267 mines over 22 days. November 28th. SS Fort Cataraqui entered Antwerp harbor. First Allied vessel since capture 85 days earlier. Docks empty for 3 months finally received cargo. 85 days. The arithmetic staggers. 85 days at 40,000 tons daily equals 3.4 million tons that could have gone directly to Belgium instead of from Normandy. Enough fuel to keep every army advancing. Enough ammunition for major offensives. Enough to maintain pressure through fall. Instead, Allied armies spent September, October, most of November struggling with shortages. While Antwerp's miracle port sat empty. Montgomery never acknowledged prioritizing Market Garden over Scheldt was a mistake. Never admitted 6 weeks wasted. Never accepted responsibility. In memoirs, he defended everything. Market garden 90% successful. German opposition unexpectedly strong. If Eisenhower gave more resources, it would have succeeded. 3-month Antwerp delay received barely a paragraph. Years later, one admission. I must admit a bad mistake on my part. I underestimated the difficulties of opening Antwerp. But even this avoided the core issue. He chose spectacular operation over unglamorous logistics. Gambled Allied lives on his vision. And lost. By late November, when Antwerp opened, everything had changed. Easy advances over. German defenses solidified. Weather miserable. Winter warfare beginning. In the Ardennes forest, German forces quietly assembled for massive counteroffensive. Hitler exploited Allied supply problems and overstretched lines, concentrating last reserves for desperate gamble. Antwerp delay gave Germany what it needed. Time to prepare, reorganize, launch the Battle of the Bulge. December 16, 1944. German Ardennes offensive hit thinly defended American positions. Over 200,000 troops, 75-mile front. Complete surprise. Catastrophic American casualties in 48 hours. Battalions overrun. Communications collapsed. Supply dumps captured. Massive bulge in Allied lines. Timing wasn't coincidental. Hitler attacked December for specific reasons. Allied supply lines still strained. Antwerp opened 3 weeks but not full capacity. Armies spread thin. German intelligence monitored Allied supply problems through fall. Knew about fuel shortages. Ammunition rationing. Allied armies unable to maintain sustained pressure. September. October, November. Ardennes offensive. Split Allied armies, capture Antwerp, force negotiated peace. Fantastically optimistic, ultimately doomed, but inflicted enormous casualties and extended the war. Over 80,000 American casualties. 19,000 killed. 106th Infantry Division surrendered 7,000 men. Largest American surrender in European theater. 6 weeks brutal winter fighting. This was the empty port's ultimate cost. Not paid in ledgers. Paid in freezing Ardennes forests by American riflemen in inadequate uniforms, fighting with rationed ammunition, holding against Germans who should have been crushed in September. Your decision's easier. Hit subscribe to follow decisions like this. After Germany surrendered, Allied intelligence interrogated German generals about the Ardennes offensive. General Alfred Jodl, Hitler's operations chief, was asked when planning began. Revealing answer. Hitler announced the plan mid-September 1944. Jodl submitted operational plans early October once Allied advances stalled and supply problems prevented sustained operations. Field Marshal Gerd von Rundstedt testified the Antwerp delay was noticed immediately by German intelligence. They monitored supply traffic. Observed no major offensives. Concluded logistics constrained operations. German generals clarified September and early October were critical months. Germany's western defenses most vulnerable. Sustained Allied pressure could have prevented reorganization. Opening Antwerp could have maintained summer momentum. Von Rundstedt asked directly, if Antwerp opened in September, could Ardennes offensive launch in December? Unequivocal, no. If Allied supplies flowed freely through Antwerp in October and November, German forces would have faced sustained pressure. No opportunity to assemble reserves. German commanders were shocked Antwerp wasn't immediately opened. They assumed clearing Scheldt would be top priority. When weeks passed, German planners realized they'd been given unexpected gift. Eisenhower spent life defending his decision to approve Market Garden before ensuring Antwerp opened. Argued Montgomery's plan had merit. Attempting Rhine crossing in September worth the risk. Nobody predicted Market Garden would fail so completely. Critics pointed out the obvious. Antwerp's importance clear from day one. Need to clear Scheldt apparent to every staff officer. Supply crisis crippling operations. Opening port should have been absolute top priority. Eisenhower's response was political. Had to maintain Anglo-American alliance. Montgomery was Britain's most prominent general. Denying resources would create diplomatic problems. Churchill sensitive about British playing secondary role. Decision came down to coalition politics versus military efficiency. Eisenhower chose to keep Montgomery happy, give him glory chance, prioritize alliance harmony over operational logic. The cost: supply tonnage not delivered September and October. Offensives not launched due to fuel shortages. German forces escaping because Allied pressure couldn't be sustained. 85 days Antwerp sat useless while men died for lack of supplies. For the complete story with archival footage and details we can't show here, membership link is below. Real history, no algorithm cuts. Thanks for watching. The cost of Montgomery's decision wasn't just measured in tonnage. Those 85 days meant fuel for Patton's Third Army to maintain its advance through September. Ammunition for First Army to conduct major offensives in October. Replacement parts for vehicles that wore out from excessive use. Winter clothing that arrived late because of transportation constraints. But the human cost is harder to calculate. How many Americans died in the Bulge because Germany had time to prepare its offensive? How many Canadian soldiers were killed clearing the Scheldt in November when the operation could have been conducted in September with less resistance? How many months was the war extended because Allied momentum was lost in fall? The facts are clear. Montgomery captured an intact port September 4th. He didn't clear the approaches until November. Allied armies struggled with supply shortages for 3 months. Germany used that time to reorganize and counterattack. Montgomery chose glory over logistics. Soldiers paid for that choice with their lives, with months of suffering that might have been avoided if the miracle port at Antwerp had been opened when it was captured rather than when it was finally cleared 85 days later. Wars are won by logistics as much as battles. The most brilliant tactics fail if supplies don't reach the front. Montgomery's choice to prioritize Market Garden over clearing the Scheldt revealed his fundamental misunderstanding of what mattered most in September 1944. He believed one more spectacular operation could end the war. He was wrong. The unglamorous work of clearing mines, capturing fortifications, opening supply lines didn't appeal to him. It wasn't the kind of operation that would make him the man who won the war. So he pursued glory instead. And the war continued.